welcome to our weekly Route Consultant webinar. Super glad you're here to join us. My name is Jesse Smith. I'm the Operations Director for Patent Logistics and sort of a fill-in operations consultant for Route Consultant. So happy to be here. Got a special guest for you today that you guys have seen before. You know and love him. I'm going to introduce him here in a few minutes. If you've not been here before, we have a lot of fun. We try to learn and we try to teach you guys a lot, give you lots of good info for the last mile space, specifically for FedEx Ground. We're going to make this informative. I do have to read a quick disclaimer before we go any farther, though, so bear with me. Route Consultant is not endorsed by and is not recommended by Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. Route Consultant is not sponsored by, is not approved by, is not associated with, and has no connection whatsoever with Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. If you've been here before, you know that one of the main ways we like to have fun is we ask a question of the day. So before you can ask us a question, and we are going to have an open Q&A at the end of our content portion today, before you can ask us a question, you've got to answer a question for us first. The question of the day today is, what is your favorite season and why? Or if you want to answer it this way, if you had to pick one season to live in for the rest of your life, what would it be? So I'm looking forward to getting into that a little bit later. If you do ask a question, you can go ahead and enter your questions anytime about any topic related to this industry, about this in this space. Everything we talk about here at Route Consultant, we are open for questions about it, not just on what we're talking about today. If you want to do that, make sure you use the Q&A button at the bottom. If you use the chat, we may not see it. So make sure you put that in the Q&A section so we can get to that in a timely manner. A couple of things before we get started on our content. So first, I want to talk about the events we've got coming up. So our next one is actually tomorrow. If you're anywhere near Miami, we've got a happy hour. Again, that's tomorrow. We got a new investor summit coming up. If you're interested in learning more about kind of getting the fire hose of information about what it's like to be a FedEx contractor, if you're new to the space, wanting to get into it, come to our new investor summit. Our next one is next week, Monday and Tuesday, the 27th and 28th. That is virtual. We still have a couple spots open. So we welcome you to come to that if that's something you're interested in. Next, we have a line haul specific roadshow. That is next week on March 30th. That's going to be in Kansas City. That's not going to focus on P&D at all. It's only going to be line haul. So if that's something you're interested in, come see us in Kansas City. We'd love to meet you and tell you more about line haul. Expo, that's our big one. As you guys know, that's our big blowout every single year in Las Vegas. This year, it's going to be July 29th and 30th. If you want to register for that, if you want to RSVP, that is free to the contractors. That it's routeconsultant.com/events. You can RSVP there. Okay, next thing we're going to talk about, we got some inventory. We've got a lot of listings lately. We're going to go through the latest ones we've got this week. We've got 5 for you guys. 4 are P&D and 1 is line haul. So let me get through these real quick. So our first one is the 6 P&D route operation in Southern New Hampshire, listed for $740,000 at 85.71% of revenue. That's a 21% EBITDA margin. Comes with 1 manager, but get this, the manager also serves as the mechanic and a contingency driver. So anytime you can get mechanical knowledge built in with your BC, that's a major, major win. So keep that one in mind. 4 spare trucks. Assumable truck debt is an option on this one. They have a gold medal status. So that's a big one to look out for there. Remote ownership opportunity. The business operates within a growing CSA. So you're going to have some growing equity if you get into this business. And then the fleet is all 2018 model year trucks or newer. So a good operation to look out there in Southern New Hampshire. The next one, Southwest Tennessee, a bigger operation, 19 P&D routes, 850,000, 45% of revenue. That's at an 11% EBITDA margin. Comes with 1 manager who has been employed with the business for nearly 7 years. So a lot of tenure there with the BC. Excellent team of drivers on staff, including several veteran drivers. The operation does service a suburban territory located in close proximity to the terminal. So if you're looking to kind of save on maintenance costs, you want those low stem miles where you don't have to drive a long way to get to your route, this might be for you. And also, this business operates a 6-day work week. So they have shut down Sunday operations out of this building. So be aware of that one. Next one is South Central Texas. 12 P&D route operation for $1.4 million, 78.95% of revenue. and that's at a 17.6% EBITDA margin. Has one manager, which handles 90% of the operational weight. So that's a whole heck of a lot. I mean, if you're looking to be remote, you want a manager who's going to take full responsibility for everything boots on the ground. This is going to be a good one for that. 2 spare trucks come with this. They do offer assumable truck debt. Suburban operation with above average profits. This is a really solid one here. The business operates out of a brand new, highly favorable terminal, strong, reliable team of drivers, and also another 6-day work week on this one. So Sundays have been cut from operations out of this building. Final P&D one is in North Alabama. This is a 20 route operation for $1.25 million, 62.19% of revenue, and that's at a 14.9% EBITDA margin. Comes with one manager who handles all the on-site responsibilities, one spare truck, excellent high-value fleet of all 2017 or newer models, a diverse portfolio of routes that includes both rural and city areas to accommodate any driver preference. That's a good mix to have there. And the business also operates under that 6-day work week with no Sunday operations. So that's your P&D. We do have one new line haul listing. That's in Northeast Pennsylvania. It's a 13-run operation for $3.1 million, and that's at 74.35% of revenue. The EBITDA margin on this one is 16.3%, 9 dedicated solo runs and 4 unassigned solo runs. 2 managers, both have been employed with the business for 5 or more years. 8 spare tractors, so a lot of extra power there. Current contractor has owned the business for 7 years. Great opportunity to step into a successful operation that's already proven itself. Remote, of course, with line haul, you have a lot more opportunity there for remote. And then, of course, in-house mechanics. It does come with some mechanics on staff to help alleviate those maintenance costs. So that's our new listings for this week. If you're interested in any of those, please reach out to us and let us know. We'd be glad to hook you up. Okay, for our content today, we're going to be talking mostly P&D focused, and you'll see why when I bring on my co-host today. It's going to be the biggest financial challenges to operating your business. So once you're in, what are some of the big financial hits that we see operating our P&D businesses? Now, there will be some overlap here with line haul. So it's not just going to be P&D, but by and large, a lot of the things we'll talk about today are specific to P&D operations. So if that's something you're interested in or already in, we got a lot of good stuff for you. So now I want to go ahead and bring on my co-host for today, someone who is, you saw him a couple weeks ago. He's someone who's very special to me, my old man, Greg Smith. Dad, welcome to the webinar.
Hey, Jess, thanks. It's great to be here. I know I'm a little late, but I wasn't in the office last week, so had to break out the St. Patty's green shirt just for the webinar. Plus, hey, this is a route consultant color, so look sharp, feel sharp, be sharp, right?
Yeah, you got the brand promotion down today, Dad. So great stuff. So, Dad, we'll get to the question of the day a little bit later, but let's go ahead and talk about this. So, you and I we've operated in the space for almost 20 years now, and we've been P&D the whole time. For those of you who may not know who we are, we started out in home delivery. Dad was a contractor. I was his driver. And then we kind of moved up. He sold his routes. And then we both ended up landing here at Route Consultant in kind of upper management roles. And so we love talking about everything that's ground focused, ground level, boots on the ground, operations focused. That is the thing that we live and breathe every day. So, Dad, let's talk a little bit about, we've kind of boiled this down to 6 categories here of financial hits to your operation. And this is a constantly shifting ground here that we have with metals and stuff like that. Things are always changing. If you want a slower paced business, this is not the space for you. Right? So be ready that these 6 are there's going to be some ebb and flow here. But in general, we've seen over time, we're going to kind of take these in order of how expensive these hits typically are. So, Dad, far and away, the biggest thing that happens to our operations that costs us financially is going to be accidents and the frequency at which we have accidents. Let's talk a little bit about that first.
Yeah, absolutely, Jess. When we started this space 19 years ago, I think the liability we had was between $500 and $1,000 per accident. I mean, we were home delivery only, just kind of getting started in the business. And now, what it's up to with Schedule L, it can be as much as 3% of your actual revenue for any given quarter, right? So, I remember we were doing some internal teaching here. We looked at those numbers, and they were pretty staggering, weren't they? So this is by far, if you get in trouble here with the way the Schedule L runs, it can really start to hit you really quickly in there. And then especially, the frequency part of that is really, we talk a lot, Jesse, to contractors about FedEx is looking at trends. If you have an accident, I know some people, especially when they have their first one, even myself, I can remember the day when I had my first accident as a contractor back in 2004. I was like, oh no, my world is over, right? And we should take it seriously. It should, we should feel something in our heart, right? Because we don't want that to be something happens. But we just got to be careful. Another kind of a hidden part of that when we do have accidents, especially if we have contractors that don't have a lot of extra vehicles, it's kind of a double whammy for them, and where they can get hit on the rental vehicle. And that's especially important if, now, of course, back in the day when we started, you couldn't even rent a P1000 unless you had another contractor that had one available to you to rent. But as far as, so you probably have to get something smaller. And if, it's getting better now, I know the supply chain is improving, but there for a while, I know people were waiting 3 and 6 months on parts. So this can really be a significant, if this doesn't motivate you to have regular safety meetings about accidents with your drivers, then, you haven't had one of these where it's hit you, where it's cost a lot to fix it. It's cost a lot in rental vehicles. It's cost a lot in time. So it's just, and then all of that at the end of that, can be an equity hit to the business, because there's, once that money's gone and it's paid for, it's gone, right? It's not like there's any kind of a, it's not like some of the technology that we put on and FedEx reimburses us for it. This is gone. It's just, it's lit up. It's over.
Yeah. And then we always talk about, this is something that Spencer always pushes really hard. There's two things you got to have in this business. You got to nail your strategy on people and trucks. And the thing about your accidents is that this is one thing that bleeds over into both of those categories, right? So
absolutely,
if you have a serious enough accident or frequent enough accidents from a single driver, that turns into a recruitment issue, right? So you're going to have to let that person go for a disciplinary reason, or if they get DQ'd by FedEx, that does happen sometimes. And so, and then the final thing I'll just say here before we move on to the next one, Dad, is FedEx is really getting tired of paying out these multi-million-dollar civil suits to people that have lost loved ones, right? It's just a sad reality that we are out there so many hours a day. We have so much exposure on the road that, yes, like you said, it's a reality of the job, but God forbid, every now and then something does seriously happen. And FedEx really is trying to crack down on that, because, we talk about FedEx has one single carrier number with DOT. Every single liability issue of the 165,000 plus drivers out there on the road in the United States are for FedEx Ground, wearing the colors, right? Every single one of those incidents counts towards that one DOT number. So, when it comes to liability, when it comes to competing with the other carriers like, Big Brown and some of the other ones, they've got to stay competitive. And the more accidents that show up, the more it raises their liability and lowers their market value as well. So we got to think about how they're thinking about it, and not just, there's the short-term loss for us in equity if we have too many accidents, but also if FedEx Ground as a whole suffers, then the contractor will suffer as well, as kind of the loss of reputation, right? So
we have to keep in mind, it's unfortunate that, the bigger accidents, Jesse, the ones where the 6 and 7 figure checks are written, those are not P&D accidents. Okay. Those are line haul accidents. But going back to your point, which is a very good one, we're all part of the same family because we run under the same DOT number. So, we all have to, we preach this ourselves about our businesses, about we succeed together, we fail together. Right. And this is really where that bigger picture right now, the way that, some of these bigger settlements that are coming in from these large accidents on the line haul side, we're having to pick up the bill for those. That's the reality of the situation. Just another one of those things that it's just the climate that we're in right now. And, all we can do is control what we can do. Obviously, if every entity takes safety, really, really seriously and eliminates their accidents, it's going to have a ripple effect the other direction.
Sure.
And that's really what we want to talk about, trying to be on that side of it, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So now let's kind of shift over to the driver retention part, and there's going to be kind of two pieces to this that we'll talk about. The first one is when it comes to efficiency, right? So I talk about this in terms of driver retention because we say, again, people and trucks. So this is more on the people side of it. And if you don't get your efficiency right, you're going to not only have sort of a loss of your profit margin. If you're running too many trucks for the type of territory that you have, too many trucks for the volume, et cetera, then you're going to suffer in your margins. But you're also, if you're going the other direction and you're running too few trucks and you're trying to be as lean and mean as you possibly can, that's when you potentially start running to get up against driver retention issues. So Dad, how do we kind of think about efficiency? How do we measure efficiency? What tools do we have available? How can we help mitigate the effects of not being efficient in this space?
Yeah, I think that, I think contractors as a whole, Jesse, they don't think about this as a real drain, a potential serious leak on their finances. Yep. But especially now that we're going through the qual cert, where I don't know if we've actually ever figured up what that amount of money is by the time we figure the training days that we're paying these people to be in class. The trainee, the trainer himself is off of his duties. We probably ought to come up with some kind of a reasonable dollar figure on that to figure out what it costs us with each driver. And then it takes a while to get that driver up to speed. And then we also talk about frequently when a new driver comes in, many times our existing drivers are like, well, I'm having to help this certain driver out every day until they get speed, and they're correct. There's probably a level of compensation that they deserve because of that. So while it may not seem as a big a hit as a one-time thing with accidents, this can potentially, when you take it over the course, especially over the course of a 12-month period of time, if you're bleeding drivers and constantly grinding through them, you're taking a significant financial hit to your business. So, this is where you ought to keep in mind when you're like, man, I just don't think this guy deserves $10 a day for a raise. Well, what's it going to cost you, an opportunity cost, and what's it going to cost you to bring a new person on? And here again, this also goes back to the, when we look at drivers, we look at the people part of this is, I would rather run with I'm more comfortable, as they say, I'm more comfortable with the devil I know than the one that I don't know. And while that driver may have some problems, if they're driving safely, we probably need to elevate that a little higher than we have in the past. We've always just said, man, they're a racehorse. They can go out and kill it. Their service numbers are great. And that's always been the benchmark where we started, right, to evaluate drivers. I think in the environment we're in now, I think you'd be well to look at it from the safety side, because it certainly has the potential to really cost you a lot of money. So going back to the efficiency piece, we are, of all the things that FedEx does, which frustrate us, they do at least show their hand to us with the work area planning tool. And I'm still amazed. I'd like to hear from people today about how many of you use the work area planning tool. If you just want to put on the comment section, I use it, I don't use it, whatever. I'm curious because I'm amazed, just as we talk to dozens of contractors a week, there's a lot of people that they know it's out there, but they haven't availed themselves to it. Okay. That is literally the scorecard, the measuring stick, the template by which FedEx, works out your contract. Okay. So if you're not familiar with that, you're really handcuffing yourself. You're only seeing your side of the equation, basically. And so, get in there and see. And then the DRO part of it, another thing that I was I always encourage our BCs to do is to get the drivers involved. Have a day where you can come in, you can throw up all the, with the sandbox part of DRO where we can play and look at what it looks like. Get the drivers in. You might be surprised. They might say, hey, why don't we redesign, this anchor area over to this guy, and I'll take this anchor area over here. Now you're going to have to be careful because you might get the driver in there that's trying to make it super easy on himself. But you're going to know that, as the AO or the BC. But I would really, I would not discount my seasoned drivers from coming in and giving me input on how I can make things more efficient, because obviously they are boots on the ground out there every day. They know, well, yeah, I know I only have like 7 pickups, but this one here takes me 20 minutes and this one takes me 15 and that kind of thing. So they can really, give you some information to really, and honestly, we talk about this all the time. We can't afford to have a single day, can we, now, of inefficiency.
Right.
So use those tools that are out there for you. If you have trouble with any of those, Jesse, that's really his specialty, is the DRO work area planner tool. We'd love to, talk to you about that and get you trained of that and help you. That will pay huge dividends for you to on the efficiency piece.
Yeah, and for those of you who are new here, may not be sure what we're talking about with DRO and work area planner. DRO stands for dynamic route optimization. And what that is just a nightly, it's a piece of proprietary software that FedEx Ground had a third-party developer create for them, so that you can plan your routes and decide how many trucks you're going to dispatch to cover your volume, your number of packages for the next day. Okay, so that's a very, depending on how well you set it up when you initially get into it, it's an incredible tool that allows you to get very granular in how you plan out your routes. So just be aware, if you're getting into the space, there are ways to see, what does FedEx expect me to run if I have 1,000 stops for this kind of territory? How many drivers should I expect to have to run on a given day? So just be aware. Now, again, my existing contractors I know are saying, well, it's not always possible to hit those metrics, right? It's a perfect rainy or not. It's a sunny day. Birds are singing. The butterflies are fluttering along. That's the kind of scenario that the work area planner numbers, when you look and see how many routes should I run, and it tells you 8 routes for 1,000 stops or whatever it is, that's a perfect world scenario. Okay?
Yeah, no book stop.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So it's an ideal. Okay. It's where FedEx engineering has gone in and said, this is how many routes should be achievable in perfect conditions. Now, a lot of the contracts, we like to say that if you have a good, well-negotiated contract, again, this is not for the contracts that are sort of poorly engineered, that FedEx doesn't have great metrics to understand the territory, but for a well-understood territory that's well-engineered, if you're running within 90% or so, all else being equal, if you're paying your drivers a fair market wage, all else being equal, you should be able to run about 90% of that work area planner number and still be profitable. Again, there's so many exceptions I won't go into, but general rule of thumb, you get a good negotiated rate with FedEx, that's what you should expect. You're not expected to hit that perfect number every single day. It's just a benchmark for you.
Yeah, let me just say, Jesse, if you're running 12 trucks, or you're running 13 trucks and you need to run 12, okay, let me just use that as an example. And each truck, is, just make it simple, is running 120 stops a day, okay? You're only talking about moving 10 stops off of that 13th truck onto your existing 12 trucks. So I think we get kind of confused and we get intimidated a little bit by our drivers. And hey, I'm at the front of the line. Okay, I've been intimidated. I've gone out and run stops myself because I didn't want a driver to go sideways or to quit or do something like that. I totally get it, but a lot of it is the way that we bring it, and getting to that efficiency number. We look at it. Oh my gosh, I've got to cut 2 routes out of here. Yeah, but I have 16 routes to distribute those 2 routes onto. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And there again, it may be some days of the week it's going to be, it's going to be natural. It's going to be easier than others. So, don't allow yourself to say, just default to it's not possible. Now there are some, granted, we've talked to them, Jesse, and my heart goes out to them because it is a battle, isn't it? When we look at it and we try every way but Sunday to make that work for them. And it's rough. It's rough. It is out there. We're not denying that, but for the vast majority of them, they just need to kind of think outside the box a little bit, get the help of their drivers for some input and make it better.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say on this kind of safety, efficiency, tension, Dad, I think you said that really well earlier. Those 2 things, if you're a new investor looking at this, those are always going to be in tension with each other, because what happens if you have a super efficient driver? There's an issue there, because if they're super efficient, it's probably because they know that specific route very, very well.
Right.
What happens is if you have to run a different number of routes throughout the days that driver is working, they might have to shift over into a different area on Tuesday than they run on Monday. right? To
Right.
accommodate the volume, because like you said, that you're using a dynamic tool to move stops between routes. So what that means is when that driver gets into an area that they don't know as well, it's a safety risk, right? They're out
It
there
is.
not as familiar with the territory that they're in. So you're in some sense, you're thinking, okay, how much safety am I willing to sacrifice for efficiency, or vice versa? And ideally, if you've got really good veteran drivers, I talked about those in some of our listings. If you've got an experienced driver on your team, they're going to be able to do both just fine. But that's the trick, right? It's balancing your recruitment piece, your driver retention piece, with your efficiency, with your safety. Those are kind of the three poles that are always pulling you in various directions based on where your business is at. So kind of just keep that in mind as you're about to invest in one of these. Those are going to be kind of the battles that you'll fight between the drivers with safety, and potentially with FedEx management if they say you need to be running fewer routes or whatever.
You just brought up a really good point, Jesse. And we've been in this space for, 19 years, but I just thought of something as you're saying that I think we can really turn into a positive. I think this is a great opportunity for your BC, or maybe even the AO. If we do have to make that shift, so we've made the change in the plan, and on Tuesday, this driver is going to be going over and running these additional 10 or 12 stops. This is a great opportunity for the AO or the BC to get in the truck with that driver on their very first day. Okay. And really give them another set of eyes to evaluate what that's like, right? Because some of the times the driver is so focused on, especially if he has a time frame that he's used to keeping, he's going to be focused on it. He might miss some things. So to me, we can almost turn it into a win-win situation where, the AO or the BC comes out that first day or the first couple of days and said, listen, I don't expect you just to do this all on your own. I'm going to help you with it. I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to take your input back and consider it when we look, but let's look at it together. Yeah. And I think there's been very few exceptions. Jesse, you can speak to this yourself, but when you go to your driver with that kind of an attitude that I'm just not dictating this to you, right. You can either take it or leave it. But rather, hey, we're going to try this. We're going to experiment together and see how it works. I just think that could be a real potential morale booster with you, and a relationship builder with a driver that they really see, they are in this with me and my input matters.
Yeah. If you've heard me say this once, you've heard me say it 1,000 times. If you listen to any of my content at all, drivers consider themselves the masters of their own domain. Yeah. They think they know their route best. And a lot of them do know their route better than anyone else in the company. Right. But what happens when you get in the truck with them? Number one, if you as an AO or a BC are eligible to drive, and those drivers see you jumping behind the wheel, that's the single most important thing you can do to build loyalty and retention in your crew in most cases, because they know that even if you're not on a truck every day, you're eligible and willing to get on a truck every day. So if you're remote, don't feel like that's something you have to do. But hey, if you're in town, jumping on the truck with a driver is absolutely, it's going to do wonders for what you're talking about there. So I completely agree. I could not agree.
Especially if you take them to lunch.
Exactly. Yeah. They get to show you all the cool little hole in the wall restaurants on their route. Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now let's move into our last three things. We'll kind of just bundle these up together. These have to do more with our actual costs of, we get into a situation we shouldn't be in, or the driver is less than honest about his dealings with the fuel card in his truck. So let's talk about towing just real briefly. Towing charges, especially in the more northern routes in the wintertime, that can be a pretty significant cost.
Yeah, that's one. And here again, that's one because we don't have it on a, it's not a check that we're writing every week or every month, but, over if you've had a series of snowstorms in your area, especially, or even, we've had a lot of places, even like in California, in Florida, they've had a lot of rains, mudslides, those types of things that are going to lead to potentially hazardous conditions. We've had other ones of our entities in the spring. They think there's like a farm road that the farmers only use in the month of July and August when it's like, rock hard. They'll try to go down it. We've had those. And so it's really important to have we talk about vendor relationships a lot, Jesse, and that's where this really pays off, is that if you can have people around, or even, we've been towed out by actual farmers in the area. So in the rural areas, people that you deliver to, and just mention to them, hey, if I get in a bind here and and I have an issue. Would you be able to help me out? And most of them, most farmers are more than willing to do that. But be a little proactive in your relationship with your towing company, and especially know what the rates are before you actually have the vehicle stuck and they're going to be there towing it out. Okay. Don't become victim to the sense of urgency when they know they've got you by the tow hook, so to say. Okay. So work that out, have a great relationship with them, let them be your partner. And then, if you can, I know a lot of contractors have 4-wheel drive pickup trucks with tow straps. I've seen some of our BCs do some pretty amazing things in towing vehicles out that I never thought were possible. So, if you're seeing that would be the quickest way to shut that down, especially if you're in a rural area where you've got smaller trucks that are easy for you to pull out. But don't ignore those. Those can be a big hit in a hurry. And we've always found those kind of come in clumps. So we don't usually just have one, we'll have 3, right? So just really be aware of that. Give yourself some alternatives and make sure you're prepared for it.
Yeah. Dad, I'll hit this inventory management one real quick, and then I'll let you finish out kind of briefly with fuel cards. Inventory management, this is one that'll creep up on you. Okay. It doesn't seem like, charging cables, docking spots in the trucks for your scanners. These are not super expensive items, but what happens is if your drivers are not careful, these little cables and stuff will absolutely grow legs and find their way to another contractor's van, another driver's van. They
personal vehicles.
Yes, they will disappear like you would not believe.
Yeah.
And some of these iPad chargers, I mean, these can be $20, $30 cords, right?
Yep.
So if you're losing 2 or 3 of these a week, that adds up. So what we typically do a lot of times is we'll say, look, here, so for your typical truck that you drive every day, Mr. Driver, we will buy you 1 cord per year. Okay, it's going to be a really nice cord. It's not one of these dinky cords. We spent some money on this. If you lose it, it's on you to buy the next one. Okay. Now that gets a little bit more tricky if you're having drivers that are kind of constantly switching between trucks. You may not want to be that strict about it, but make some sort of rule in place that if the drivers don't take care of the equipment that they have in the trucks, they need to bear some sort of responsibility for that. So again, that's something you need to have a process in place to track that stuff isn't getting lost, and some sort of system, some sort of disciplinary system for drivers that holds them accountable. And then finally, Dad, let's talk about fuel cards. We got a couple minutes before Q&A, but fuel cards, how do we manage that if we suspect a driver of theft? What's that process look like?
Sure. So a lot of the fuel card companies, we like ours at Route Consultant Purchasing Alliance is great. They have a great way to do this, but they have some safeguards in place. So you have a mostly diesel fleet. It'll give you a warning if somebody tries to use it for unleaded gas. It'll let you know if they're filling up multiple times a day. You can put dollar amounts on those. That has been a really tricky thing to navigate for us over the last couple of years with the way fuel prices have gone. And then when you have vehicles, some that only have a 20-gallon tank and some have a 45-gallon tank, it gets hard to set that universal amount for those. But, as you said, Jesse, our drivers are creatures of habit. So when you can monitor them, if you suspect that, hey, I've been getting a fuel bill of X amount for so many weeks in a row, and all of a sudden I see a 10% or a 15% jump, do your research. And, it's going to be multiple. If it's multiple times a day, if it's outside of their delivery area is going to be a biggie. And then if there's just something, maybe the time of day is just unusual. The vast majority of drivers are going to fill up before they leave in the morning, right? Or when they first leave, they first dispatch, or close to the end of their route before they're getting ready to drive home from their delivery area. So they're deviating outside of that path. Make sure that you get on it. But I will say, of all the things that we have, we've probably seen most consistently where we've seen leakage with these. And this is another thing. Give us a call. We've dealt with these in varying different ways. Some of them we've been really strict with the people. Others we've been pretty lenient on and worked with them about that. But this can be one that, we're talking about $5 diesel fuel. This can get outrageous pretty quickly. So, if you're seeing something out of the ordinary and you're not monitoring this, then you better, I would get on it.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah. So now let's go ahead and transition into our Q&A. So I'll ask you first, if you had to choose one season to live in for the rest of your life, And I know what your answer is already because I know where you live, but what would it be? What's your favorite season?
Well, spring is mine. So, and this past weekend is literally my favorite. I'm a huge college basketball fan, and so this weekend was the NCAA men's basketball tournament, and it just kind of marks the beginning of spring. Unfortunately, in Illinois, Central Illinois, where I live, we had so Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday were the games. 3 of the 4 days we had snow on the ground. Okay, so it didn't seem a whole lot like, but I love spring. I just love the just the kind of the anticipation of really, I guess, what's behind spring. But I love it, see it when, the grass starts to green up, the leaves start to come out on the tree. It's like life returns. It's like there's just kind of a refreshing thing for me about, the whole cycle of how things work in nature, and just seeing that, like, come back to life in the springtime to me is just super invigorating.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's my second favorite. My favorite though is fall time. And it used to be summer, but I telling someone this the other day, about probably 4 or 5 years ago, while I was a BC, I was out delivering right here in hot and humid Middle Tennessee. And I don't know, there was one day, I think it was in July or August. I'm like, this is enough. I've had enough of summer being my favorite season. I used to say I'd rather sweat than shiver. Now I'm completely the opposite. Let me bundle up and get a lot of stuff on me and warm myself up that way. And I'll take that over sweating any day now. So fall is my favorite, but followed closely by winter right behind it. I've totally shifted the other way from where I used to be. Yeah.
Yeah. Come spend this winter with Illinois with me. I'll work that out of you.
Yeah, I know it'll change. Yeah, for sure. Okay, Dad, our first question is from Anonymous. They say, my favorite season is winter. I love the holidays and I'd rather be cold than hot. Amen to that. And they grew up in Las Vegas. So I can definitely see that. Okay. So their question is a bit off topic, but they're a longtime supporter of Spencer and have supported all the products for years. Seems like after the incidents of last year, he fell off the map. Is he okay? And is he still affiliated with Route Consultant? Will he be at the expo? So we do get questions about this from time to time. I don't know. I don't follow my boss around. I don't know exactly what he's got planned, but he is still around. And I do know he's always cooking up something that's, 5 years down the road beyond what the rest of us can see. He's already seen it and he's planning for it. So I promise he's got some good stuff in the works. So stay tuned. He's always going to be around and planning the next best thing for us. So yes, he is still around. He's fine. He's living, breathing. So Spencer is he's still good.
Yeah, I'm in the office this week in our home office in Brentwood. And so his office is literally two offices down from mine. So I can speak with full authority. When I got here at 7:45 this morning, he was here at his post with his 79 screens or however many he has in his office in front of him. I mean, the guy's just incredible what he can get done in a single day. But he's taken some time off, which he really needed. And he's come back refreshed and just raring to go. And so I am so just buckle up, because when he does come back, you'd be ready, because it's going to be great. It's going to be innovative. It's going to be exciting. It's just we're really full of anticipation here as to what's next with Spencer. So yeah, he's doing fantastic.
Next question, Dad, is from Jeff Wetzel. He says his favorite season is fall because of the hunting. Yes, I can agree. I'm already amen to that as well. Not gotten out in the woods for a while, but I miss it. I hope to do that soon. He asked, why have contractors not gotten their own DOT numbers? Now, Jeff, I'm not an expert on this, but I can tell you the little we've looked into it. From what I understand, the insurance to have your own carrier number with DOT, the insurance part of that is astronomical. So to have your own actual full-on carrier number registered with your own number, it's the liability cost, the insurance costs that go into that are far greater. And that's one of the actual huge benefits of being a contractor with FedEx Ground, is that they bear all of those greater liability costs and only pass a fraction of those on to us. So
right.
It's that overall cost of carrying that number. It's just cost prohibitive for carriers the size of any individual contractor. It's just not worth it.
Yeah. And I don't know, Jesse, if that's something, I wouldn't put anything to the side and say that would never happen. I mean, I never thought we'd see the day where FedEx was using a lot of purchase power on the line haul side. But, I'm amazed when I make the 6-hour trip from Tennessee to Illinois 2 or 3 times a month, the number of FedEx Ground trailers that I see pulled with purchase power. It's more than it's ever been. And so, I don't know that I would say that isn't an option that wouldn't come someday. I never thought we'd be delivering express packages on the ground side. Did you? Heck, I never thought on the home delivery side we'd be delivering a lot of ground packages. So yeah. I wouldn't take it off the table, but you're right. Right now, it's really a cost of insurance issue is just really prohibitive.
Yeah. Next one is from my boy Des. So Desmond Howard asked the next one. So he's the guy that took my place when I moved on from being a BC here in Middle Tennessee, contractor I worked for. I'd like to take credit for Des, but he had plenty of go get you attitude before he came on. He was a natural born leader from the time he first stepped foot in one of my trucks. So he's been killing it, been crushing it. Des, I hope you're feeling better. I know you've been a little bit ill lately, but Desmond says, we do use work area planner. So thanks for answering that, Des. He says another thing to help with safety would be random driver check-ins. Absolutely. And then his favorite season is fall because there aren't any devil fairies flying around, AKA pollen. So I can definitely relate to that. Well, that's well said, Des.
Yeah, Des has been like there for a while. He was like our man on the move for us. We'd have, one of our operations needed help on the weekends. He would bail us out, man. I just really, really appreciate him. And
he'd send us a driver if he had one to spare. And
he's been golden for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, next one is David Branch. So he says his favorite season is summer because it's the best time for the beach. I can definitely get behind that as well.
Yeah.
He says, I've heard of BCs leaving the company. Now it's funny question here, Dad. I've heard of BCs leaving the company and deleting or removing the DRO as a way to hurt the business. Is there a way to back up or save what your DRO is? Well, David, let me just give you the answer to that. Yes, that 100% does happen. And that 100% did happen to one of our businesses at Patent Logistics. We had a lead driver with an egg on my face as the ops director for not revoking his DRO access before we let him go. But he was really being a toxic employee, kind of stringing us along. And it's just time for him to part ways. And he was not happy that we let him go. And so with his credentials that he had, he did choose the nuclear option and go in and delete all of our DRO files with one exception. And his reasoning was he was the primary person that worked on the DRO for that company. So he said that was his intellectual property. Okay, so that's a real story. It can happen. Thankfully, there's a very easy fix. So all you need to do is call Route Consultant. They will put you in touch with Critical Systems Support, which is the FedEx side that works with Route Consultant to develop DRO. They can what we call re-image the system to say, okay, I want to get it back to what it looked like yesterday. And you give them a date and time, they'll say, you got it. We'll put back the DRO setup that was at that date and time. We'll reactivate it. Now, if you've made any changes since then you're not going to see them, right? So if you made any updates to your route plans, you're not going to see those. But it's a whole heck of a lot better than building a bunch of brand new route plans from scratch. So yes, the good news is, the bad news is it does happen. The good news is you can get that back very quickly.
Yeah, let me tell you another thing. So I don't even know if I've told you this or not, Jesse, but so this is just something I learned from a good friend of mine that's in pretty high up in management with at a particular terminal, that like in the month of when they go into peak, FedEx management actually takes pictures and records our pre-peak route plans because they want to know what they're like on one hand. The other one is there have been times where contractors have walked away during peak, or they've let contractors go during peak. And they would take those with them. So they want to know post-peak, what were the plans like? Because, in January or 1st of February kind of returns to what it was like pre-peak, right? So FedEx, for the most part, if you ever get in that situation, they probably have some too. They may not be the ones that were like a week ago or a month ago, but they all have them. Okay, now getting to the person that will be the gatekeeper to let them give those to you, that might be another story. But I know for a fact that they themselves keep that to kind of guard themselves, kind of hedge their bets too.
Yeah. And of course they got a lot to lose too, right? So it's in their best interest to keep up with that. So yeah, great point there, Dad. If you guys have more questions, go ahead and get them in. We've got one more, and then we're gonna call it if we don't get more questions after this. So give us a little bit of time after this one, but this is the last one I see. So if you got something you want to say, go ahead and put it in there. All right, last one is from Anonymous. Dad, their favorite season is fall. They look forward to hot toddies and fall fun activities. All right, so the question is, I've seen BCs and managers who have a bonus or incentives for them. How often do you see bonuses and incentives for drivers? Do we recommend this? Do the drivers care more about benefits? Dad, what do we see there?
Yeah, so here's the thing, and Spencer's spoken to this, and he's probably really changed my mind on this. I was a contractor myself for almost 10 years and would do this from time to time, especially Christmas bonuses. But I think we really got to be careful and understand what a bonus is. So if you give, let's say you give Christmas bonuses, okay? And if you give it, let's say you gave somebody $100 Christmas bonus, automatically the next year, what are they going to expect? If you give them $100 the next year, they're going to be like, well, I worked for you a whole nother year and I only got the same bonus I got last year. So you're going to set yourself up you're always going to have to increase it. Okay. And secondly, the specialness of the bonus kind of begins to lose its luster after a period of time, and it becomes expected. Okay. And there's nothing worse than having to give somebody something, not because you think they deserve it, but just because they expect it, or they threaten to do something negative if you don't, right? Because a bonus should be what it's designed to be. You did something special over and above what the normal person does. And so I would be very careful how I started any kind of a regular bonus structure, because you're going to be married to it for a very long time. And then what's another thing, Jesse, we say all the time, drivers talk to each other, right?
Yeah.
So be prepared. If you give one to one or two or five, get ready, because the others are going to eventually come, probably sooner rather than later, with their hand out. So we just really, by the end, we really got away from that. And then but the thing I liked about that is when we did give a bonus, it really meant something. It really multiplied its impact, because it was something truly extraordinary that somebody did.
Yeah. Yeah, that's well said. Yeah. And the thing to speak to the benefits part of this, it's still not ubiquitous in the space to have benefits like health insurance, 401k. You'll see it here and there with contractors, and it's getting much more common. We've got vendors like Realm Health. That's a big one. They have some incredibly innovative solutions that they brought to the space. But in general, it's not overly common yet for P&D contractors to offer health benefits and things like that to their drivers. So what I will say about that, it's generally not expected, which in a sense is a good thing. But I will say, if there's two contractors at a terminal and a driver is seeing the same daily wage between those two contractors, but one of them offers health insurance, that's going to be the way they're going to lean, right? Yeah. So if it's a difference maker, if you're paying a fair daily wage, but you want to set yourself apart even more, give them a benefit like health insurance or a 401k to put it over the top. That's going to do a lot for you, especially in your more competitive hiring markets. Offer something like that, and it can make the difference.
Probably the most common bonus, Jesse, just a real quick addendum on this, that we see are people that are having a difficult time, especially getting a Sunday driver. I know there's a lot of terminals, thankfully, that have now gone back to 6-day, which we're so grateful for on many, many fronts. But that usually is the one that you will see on a continuing basis. And that one doesn't really get you into the trouble that the other ones do, because let's face it, there isn't a group of men and women standing, hey, can I work Sunday this week? It isn't happening. So I wouldn't be afraid of that one. I know contractors that have done it since the onset of Sunday deliveries. They've upped that game. They've had to, and they've been very successful at it. And they've been able to work the rest of their budget around that because they made that decision early on. So I'm not totally against them, but I just, you just really, think long term. Again, give us a call. We have a lot more we can talk to you about this, give you some real life examples of when we've done this, and just be careful before you that's kind of the easiest way to bonus, isn't it, with money. And we've actually found it to be a lot more effective to use non-cash areas to bonus and make drivers feel special. Love love to share with you about some of those types of things too, that really makes drivers feel special, to give them a gift or something else that nobody else has.
Yeah, there's an incentive that's out there. We probably tried it. We can tell you what not to do and what to do. So yeah, we can let you know. Next one, we actually got a few more here, Dad.
Cool.
Anonymous attendee. Another one says fall is their favorite season. They say we have a DRO course from something we bought from Route Consultant. Could they teach us more about Work Area Planner? Absolutely, we can. Now I'll give you guys a free piece of advice on Work Area Planner, which is wap.routesmart.com. And you're going to use your MyGroundBiz account credentials as an owner or a BC with access to log into that. And you can do everything you need to know in there. On the landing page of that website, or when you click into I think it's the main dashboard page, there's a bunch of tutorial videos that show you how to use Work Area Planner. Now, if you don't want to go through and watch those videos because they're dry as heck, that's totally fine. That's one of the things that I particularly specialize in here at Route Consultant. That's one of the products I offer. If you want to get with me, just put that in the chat or reach out to us otherwise, and they'll get you hooked up with me and we'll get some time on the calendar. That is a paid service that I provide. It's same as DRO, Work Area Planner. It's all kind of the same thing to me. And I'll just, whatever you need, I'll spend some time with you and we can get that figured out.
So are you the wet alternative to their dry alternative? Is that
that's a great way to put it? You know, that's true. Yeah. Okay, so Mark Schmidt, he says favorite season is fall because it's football season. So I'm surprised we haven't seen that one yet, Dad.
Man, I'm getting way outnumbered here. I feel all alone in spring.
Yeah. He says, Jesse, my average hourly rate for drivers is $19.71 an hour. How does that fare around the industry? That is a difficult one for me to answer because every market is different. Okay, so I don't want to just give a hard and fast answer to that, Mark. What I can tell you is that one of the vendors we work with very closely, Bright Flag Recruiting, they offer a market analysis. They can tell you what the going wage is, the average, the fair wage, the median wage, whatever it is. They offer an analysis for you for your market that you're looking at. So reach out to Bright Flag and see if they can offer that for you. We're pretty much nationwide. When we work with them, they'll give us figures for almost every region of the United States, right? So if there's an area they don't cover, let us know. And we have some other metrics we can look at to maybe help you with that. But reach out to Bright Flag, see if they can help you with that. That's one of the really great things about them that we love is that market analysis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, another one here, Dad. Another anonymous, great answer, very helpful on bonuses. Since you mentioned drivers all talk to each other, how do you handle situations around driver daily versus weekly pay or daily and weekly pay? I've seen big variations between drivers and different operations. We can kind of speak to that a little bit, but anonymous, if you could maybe give some clarification. Are you talking about within the same terminal you've seen, you know, a variation of like one driver's making $140 a day, another one's making $220 a day? What kind of variations are you talking about there? But Dad, you want to kind of handle that in terms of the driver dynamics in a terminal? What does that look like as far as, you know, one contractor's driver goes over and talks to another one person that they're friends with? What does that conversation kind of look like? What are the effects of that?
Well, one of the things I really like about being in this space, Jesse, is that we can truly be a merit-based system. Okay. And we're losing, you know, in our country, there's a lot of, and I'm not against the word fair, but I mean, the fact of the matter is the guy that can deliver 250 stops in the same amount of time in the same area that another guy can do 150 stops, they don't deserve to be paid the same. I'm sorry. Production does matter. Okay. And so there's going to be that variation. And, you know, now there may be reasons why the guy that can only do 150 will make the same amount as the guy that can do 250 because he brings other things to the table. Maybe he's extremely safe. Maybe he's a great team player. Maybe he's willing to fill in and work for other people when he can't. So, you know, there's a lot of different, I think we get locked into this box of taking just the metrics and translating that to how much we're going to pay our drivers. Okay. And we miss the soft, what we call, Jesse, the soft skills part of that, right? If you look at the driver evaluation forms that we use to evaluate our own drivers, they took into account those soft skills. Okay. We talk in some of our training programs, we talk about about drivers and the analogy of horses and how some of them are ones that can, they're stallions, they're race horses. They can really go out there, they can do it, but they're very high spirited. There's just a lot of negatives behind them. And so I would really encourage you to look at the entire package of them. And then the other part of that is, where are you having trouble getting drivers? Some operations are very rural, and it's very difficult for them to recruit drivers to those rural areas. People don't want to drive a lot of miles. Okay. And so they're going to end up paying more. Whereas in, 3 terminals to the east, it might be the exact opposite. So it's really hard to tell. The biggest thing is to make sure within your own building that you have, and that's where it's good to have a relationship with other contractors in your building to see where they are, because you don't want to be, you don't want to be at the top, you don't want to be at the bottom, you want to be in the middle or the, maybe just above the, the 60 to 70 percentile is kind of where we would always shoot for, and just see. But, don't forget to factor in, there's more things than just production service numbers that go into making a good driver, making him worth the money that you pay him.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's so many things. I mean, we could do entire hours and hours of content on just that one piece alone, the different nuances and things that go into play when you're talking about driver pay and how to fairly compensate people relative to another person. But they did clarify that one contractor operation as well as in the same terminal. I think you pretty much covered that. The idea of home field advantage. You got low stem miles versus high stem miles, residential route versus business. I mean, there's so many things. Again, the best thing to do here, Anonymous, or whoever is asking about that, if you have a prospectus from a business you're looking at, the best way for us to help you is to get a specific picture of the lay of the land of that specific CSA, that contracted service area. So we can tell you maybe what to expect. And then once you get that market analysis piece from Bright Flag, we can kind of tie all these pieces in together for you, give you a really good educated look on what would be fair and what kind of bonuses should be in play for you. Now look, we're going to go ahead and wrap up here. I don't see any more questions. We did have a kind comment from Mel Glenn. This is such a great webinar, great gems drop here. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Mel. We appreciate you being here. To everybody, thank you so much for showing up today. Letting Dad and I rant about our favorite subject here. So we hope to see you guys again soon. Next week we'll be back. And then Dad, hopefully we'll see you again soon.
All right. Thank you. See y'all.
All right, bye-bye.